The ammonia hit Maren before the shuttle door finished opening. It burned her nostrils and settled at the back of her throat, a chemical taste she could not swallow away. She breathed through her mouth and stepped onto the grated landing pad. The violet light was worse. It made her skin look bruised, her gray-streaked hair a flat black. She blinked against it and kept moving. A Draxis attendant stood at the corridor entrance. It did not speak. It gestured with a three-fingered hand toward the passage behind it, the movement precise and dismissive. Maren followed without comment. Two human security officers fell in behind her, their boots ringing against the grating. She heard their breathing, tight and controlled. Good. They were nervous but holding. The corridor walls were ribbed like a reptile's belly. The texture pressed in from both sides, close and oppressive. The warmth made her sweat feel cold against her skin. She counted her steps. 12, 20, 30. She did not know why she was counting. It gave her brain something to do besides imagine every way this could fail. Torvin appeared on a raised platform at the corridor's end. No descent followed. Instead, the Draxis stood with his copper scales catching the violet light, his slitted amber eyes fixed on her. He waited until she stopped walking, until she stood directly below him. "You are the human requesting access to the architect domain," he said. The translator flattened his voice into something neutrally artificial. No warmth, no contempt, just the words delivered like a verdict. Maren tapped her index finger once against her thigh, a habit she could not break. Humanity wants to study the probe as neutral observers. The hegemony could benefit from shared data. Torvin's throat clicked, a soft sound, almost a burble. She had studied Draxis physiology for 6 weeks before this trip. It was an involuntary tell. Annoyance. "Humanity is fractured," Torvin said. "Your colonies are starving, your core worlds are pulling inward, the galaxy smells blood, and you arrive asking for access." He let the pause stretch. She did not fill it. The Draxis do not share territory with creatures unable to govern themselves. Maren kept her expression neutral. She had expected worse. She had prepared for worse. The exhaustion from 3 days of transit was still there, pulling at her shoulders, but she refused to let it touch her voice. "Then give me a tour of the station first. Prove I am not a spy. Prove I'm not here to steal your technology or sabotage your operations. Let me walk through your domain. Let me show you one human alone is not a threat worth fearing." Torvin's vertical pupils dilated slowly. He processed her words like a predator reading the wind. A smaller Draxis stepped forward from the shadows near an airlock. Blue-gray scales, a missing spur on his left hand. He did not look at Torvin for permission. Instead, his curious eyes fixed on Maren. "I will escort her," Zelthar said. His voice was shorter than Torvin's, clipped at the edges. He closed his eyes as he finished speaking. She remembered the briefing file, a sign of concentration among his species. He was listening to something she could not hear. Torvin gave a single nod. Then he turned and walked off the platform, disappearing into a hatch. It sealed behind him with a soft hiss of pressure. Maren let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. Zelthar opened his eyes. "This way." He led her deeper into the station without waiting for a response. The corridor narrowed further, the ribbed walls brushing her shoulders. The smell of ozone grew stronger under the ammonia. Something electrical was working hard nearby. A ventilation system, a power node. She did not know. "You negotiated poorly," Zelthar said, not looking back. "I negotiated exactly how I intended." He stopped, turned. His amber eyes studied her face the way Torvin's had studied her body. "You offered shared data with nothing to share. This is not negotiation. It is begging with a smile." Maren pressed her lips together. He was right. She knew he was right. She had made the offer deliberately to see how the hegemony would respond. Hearing it dissected so cleanly made her jaw tighten. "I needed to know what they value," she said. "And what did you learn?" "That they value the appearance of power more than the content of it." Zelthar did not click. He did not close his eyes. He simply held her gaze for a long moment, then turned and continued walking. They passed through a wider chamber where Draxis technicians worked at crystalline consoles. Their three-fingered hands moved through holographic displays. One of them looked up at Maren and hissed. She did not flinch. The technician looked away. "Torvin was not wrong," Zelthar said, his voice quieter now. "Your species is fractured. Your colonies are failing. I have read the reports. You have no unified military command. No single government. You arrive as a representative of a people unable to agree on anything." Maren stopped walking. That is exactly why you should work with us. Zelthar turned, his head tilted at an angle, making his neck scales ripple. A species can coordinate without a central authority, Maren said. It maintains diplomatic relations while its own government is crumbling. It sends representatives to negotiate when its own people are starving. A species like that understands compromise. We know how to build bridges because we have spent our entire history fighting each other, then finding reasons not to. She tapped her finger against the nearest wall. The ribbed surface was warm and slightly damp. You see weakness. I see a species. It learned to cooperate precisely because we have no other choice. Zelthar's eyes closed, held, opened. Follow me, he said. I will show you the observation wing. They walked in silence for another minute. The corridor opened into a wider gallery with a curved ceiling. The violet light softened to something almost blue. Maren's sweating stopped. The air cooled. Zelthar stopped at a sealed blast door. He pressed his palm to a panel. The door irised open with a grinding sound. Beyond it was the probe chamber. The architect probe floated at the room center, a smooth black sphere the size of a human head. It was suspended a handspan above the floor. No seams, no lights. Its surface rippled like oil, slow and constant, as if the sphere was digesting its own skin. Maren stepped closer. The ripple changed. The probe had detected her. Remarkable, she breathed. Yes, Zelthar said, it is. She moved to the left, trying to see the probe from another angle. The blast door was still open behind her. The chamber was wide. The lighting was harsh and white, completely different from the violet corridors. She caught a glimpse beyond the probe. A human-shaped silhouette stood at the far edge of the chamber, half hidden behind a support column. Maren froze. The silhouette moved, one step, two. It disappeared behind the column and did not reemerge. Her hand went to her side where her sidearm should have been. She had left it on the shuttle, diplomatic protocol. Did you see that? She said. Zelthar turned. See what? She stared at the column. The space where the figure had been was empty. The light did not bend. No shadows moved. No visible source. It made no sense. She forced herself to breathe. Nothing. I thought I saw something. Zelthar's eyes closed again. He was listening. She was still staring at the empty space when the probe's surface rippled one final time and stopped. The orange holographic light bled across Torvin's scales. It painted them the color of burnished copper as he studied the transmission logs. The probe's scan patterns were erratic, not broken, deliberate. It had logged 3,700 transmissions in the last cycle, all of them aimed at a point beyond the galactic arm. It made no sense. He traced the vector with a claw. The destination was empty space. No star, no nebula, no known relay station, just a patch of void where nothing lived. The architects had been dead for 40,000 cycles. Their machines still sent reports into the dark. His throat clicked once. The door behind him opened with a hydraulic sigh. Zelthar entered, his pale blue-gray scales catching the orange glow. He stopped at the edge of the holographic panel's reach. Behind him, an aide tended to the wall-mounted cooling vent, adjusting a valve with quiet precision. The human diplomat requested access to the secondary observation deck, Zelthar said. His eyes closed briefly, then opened. I granted it. Torvin's throat clicked twice. You approved a security breach without consulting me. It is not a breach. The observation deck has no classified systems. The view is quite good. Zelthar's missing spur scraped against the doorframe as he shifted his weight, a faint scratch sound. She wanted to see the probe's position relative to the station's orbit. I saw no tactical risk. Torvin turned from the panel. The orange light slid across his face, catching the vertical slits of his pupils. The humans are desperate, Zelthar. Their colonies are failing. Core worlds are pulling inward. They will trade anything for survival. Granting them access to anything is a mistake. They already traded something. The words landed like a stone in still water. Torvin stopped, his tail curled once a slow motion. Explain. Zelthar stepped closer, his hands clasped behind his back. The posture was formal, an overseer making a report. The human engineer, Lysander. He carried a portable scanner into the maintenance corridor during the tour. I assumed he was cataloging the station's layout for his own records. He was not. What was he doing? Identifying a flaw in the fusion core alignment. The third node had drifted 0.03 degrees off harmonic resonance. Our own diagnostics missed it. His scanner caught it within 30 seconds of passing through the chamber. Torvin's throat did not click. It was silent. The cooling vent hissed softly, cycling warm air smelling of recycled lubricant. The aide adjusted the valve again without looking up. "That is not desperation," Zelthar said. His voice was quiet, almost thoughtful. "That is competence." Torvin stared at the holographic panel. The probe's transmission vector glowed steady and orange, pointing into nothing. He had assessed humans as fractured, ungovernable, weak. A species overextended, now bleeding out in public for every observing power to see. But weak species did not catch resonance drift in alien fusion cores within 30 seconds. Weak species did not bring that tool to a negotiation. "Monitor them," Torvin said. His voice carried the flat weight of command. "Every movement, every conversation, every device they power on, report any deviation directly to me." Zelthar bowed his head, a single nod, "As you command." He turned and left. The door closed behind him with another hydraulic sigh. The aide finished adjusting the vent with a soft click of metal on metal. Torvin was alone. He stood in the orange glow, his reflection rippling across the holographic surface. He accessed a private message queue, one unchecked since before the human delegation arrived. The Polaran envoy had sent a sealed transmission 3 cycles ago. He had ignored it. Polarans were flighty, diplomatic creatures. They collected information the way some species collected minerals for the pleasure of hoarding. He opened the message. The text scrolled across the panel in the precise, uninflected characters of the Polaran written tongue. Torvin read it once, then he read it again. The Polarans reported human emissaries making overtures to multiple species over the past 12 cycles. The Selenith had been contacted. These crystalline sentients communicated through resonant frequencies. Their presence felt like a low hum in the air. The Polarans noted the Selenith had not rejected the overture. The Torrent had received a delegation. These gaseous entities could only be perceived as shimmering distortions. They had listened to the human proposal without immediate dismissal. The Chronodrift had been offered a data-sharing agreement and had accepted. The Chronodrift were temporal beings existing outside normal causality. They experienced time as a surface, not a line. Their acceptance was unprecedented. The Polarans found it interesting. Torvin's throat clicked once, then again. Interesting was not a word Polarans used lightly. These beings measured interest the way others measured threat. When a Polaran called something interesting, it meant they had already begun analyzing its implications for the balance of power. He closed the message and stared at the probe's transmission vector again, still pointing into void, still sending data to a destination no living being could explain. The humans were building a web around the hegemony. Not through military force, they did not have the strength for that. They were building it through contact, through data sharing, through the slow, patient work of making themselves useful to species with no reason to trust them. Desperation did not look like that. He was about to dismiss the panel when a second message arrived. The sigil at the top was unfamiliar. He opened it anyway. The Echo-Ancient delegation had just arrived at a human colony station. They were discussing trade terms. Torvin's claws pressed into the edge of the panel. The orange light flickered once, steadying as his grip shifted. The Echo-Ancients were temporal beings. They did not negotiate with transient species. They had refused to speak with the hegemony for 300 cycles. They were speaking with humans. The transmission ended with a single line of text, unmarked and unsigned. "They are faster than you think." Torvin stood in the orange glow, the words hanging in the recycled air. For the first time since the human delegation had arrived, he did not know what to do with his hands. The cold bit through Maren's flight jacket. Her breath fogged the reinforced crystal. She wiped a hand across the surface to clear it. Beyond the pain, the probe floated in the void, a black sphere no larger than her head. No lights, no movement, just the patient stillness of something ancient. It had been watching for longer than her species had existed. Lysander crouched by the portable data link. His fingers worked the interface with a technician's precision, but his shoulders stayed tight. The scanner hummed, a low vibration pressing against her molars. "Almost there," he said. "The external field is weird, it doesn't want to sync." "Keep trying," Maren said. She did not look away from the probe. The hum shifted pitch, dropped, then steadied into a clean tone. "Got it," Lysander breathed. "Yes, yes, look at this." Maren crossed to him. The display showed a cascade of data. Lines of energy signatures and material composition scrolled faster than she could read. But one pattern caught her eye, a repeating sequence at the bottom of the stream. "What am I looking at?" Lysander pointed. "Those are transmission intervals. They are not random. The probe is pinging a specific route. It is a beacon, Maren, not just gathering data. It is marking a path." Behind them, the door hissed open. Maren turned. Zelthar stood in the doorway, his pale blue-gray scales catching the violet light from the corridor. His eyes were fixed on the display. "You have made contact with the probe," he said, flat. "No accusation yet, but no warmth either." "We synced a passive scanner," Maren said. "No transmission, no interference, just observation." Zelthar stepped closer. His missing spur on his left hand caught the light as he gestured toward the scanner. "What have you discovered?" Maren hesitated. The pause cost her. Before she could answer, heavy footsteps rang in the corridor beyond, deliberate, measured, each one a statement. Torvin entered. His copper scales caught the cold light from the observation pane. His amber eyes found her immediately. His vertical pupils narrowed to slits. "The human diplomat has accessed the probe," he said. It was not a question. "I permitted a passive scan," Zelthar said. His voice carried no defiance but no apology either. Torvin ignored him, his gaze fixed on Maren. "You came to this station claiming you wanted to prove humanity is not a threat, yet your first action is to reach for the station's one crucial object." "I am sharing information," Maren said. "Not stealing it. Lysander's scanner is passive. We took nothing." "You took data," Torvin said. "Data belonging to the hegemony by right of discovery." Maren held his gaze. "The architects built the probe, not the hegemony. You found it. You did not create it. The data belongs to whoever can read it." Torvin's throat clicked. The sound was soft, almost inaudible. In the silence of the observation deck, it rang like a bell. "You have not informed us about your meetings with the Polaran," he said. The room went still. Maren felt the words land like a weight in her chest. "The Polaran envoy reached out to us," she said carefully. "We responded. That is standard diplomatic protocol." "Standard," Torvin repeated. The word dripped with contempt. "You met with the Polaran without informing the hegemony. You met with the Selenith, the Torrent. The Chronodrift accepted a data agreement from your emissaries 12 cycles ago." Maren kept her face neutral. Inside, her mind raced. He knows more than he should. Someone has been talking. "We are building a coalition," she said. "Not a conspiracy. Humanity is fractured, we know that. You have made that point repeatedly, but fractured species do not survive alone. We are reaching out to anyone who will listen." "You are building influence," Torvin said, "behind our backs while asking for our trust." "I am trying to prevent a war," Maren said. Her voice carried more edge than she intended. "The Polaran have no interest in conflict. Neither do the Selenith. The Chronodrift barely register that other species exist. These are not alliances, they are conversations." Torvin's eyes narrowed further. "Conversations you did not disclose." Maren opened her mouth, closed it. He was not wrong, and that was the problem. The meetings had been quiet, deliberately quiet. She had hoped to present a completed network, not a work in progress. The timing had betrayed her. "Confiscate the equipment," Torvin said. The two guards moved before Maren could protest. One took the scanner from Lysander's hands. The other pulled the data link from its mount on the floor. Lysander did not resist. He raised his hands, palms open, and stepped back. But as he passed her, he leaned close. His voice dropped to a whisper, barely audible over the hum of the station's cooling systems. "The signal is reaching a chronodrift node. They are the only ones who can receive it." Maren's breath caught. She kept her face still, but her mind seized the information like a lifeline. The guards left with the equipment. Torvin watched them go, then turned back to Maren. His scales caught the light. For a moment he looked less like a politician and more like a predator sizing up prey. "You will remain in your quarters until I decide what to do with you," he said. "Your engineer will be held separately." He left without waiting for a response. His footsteps echoed down the corridor, each one a door closing. Maren stood in the cold. The observation deck felt smaller now. The probe floated beyond the crystal, still and patient. She wondered if it had seen this scene play out 1,000 times before. Arrivals, arguments, confiscations, it did not care. It was built to watch, not to intervene. Zelthar remained in the doorway. His eyes were closed. His breathing was slow, measured. It was the deep concentration of his species. They processed information before speaking. Zelthar, Maren said. His eyes opened. What do you know about the chronodrift? His gaze met hers. His vertical pupils dilated, a slow pulse of amber and black. He said nothing. But his silence was an answer. It told her everything she needed to know. He knew something. He was weighing whether to speak. And in the hegemony, silence was the currency of caution. Maren tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. She tapped her finger once against the crystal pane. She had come here to prove humanity could cooperate. The Draxis were afraid of human networking. They understood its power better than she had given them credit for. But they did not understand the full shape of it yet. They did not know about the chronodrift node. And they did not know silence could be leveraged just as effectively as speech. She turned from the probe and walked toward the door. Zelthar did not stop her. He did not follow. But as she passed him, she caught the faintest flicker in his eyes. Interest, suspicion, and something resembling hope. The corridor smelled of burnt circuit insulation, old and sharp. It coated the back of Zelthar's throat with every breath. He stood with his back to the flickering status panel. Its light strobed across his pale blue scales in uneven pulses. Maren faced him, her gray-streaked hair pulled tight. Her index finger tapped once against her thigh, a waiting posture. Lysander stood 20 meters down the corridor. One hand pressed to the wall junction, he watched the entrance they had come through. Zelthar's throat clicked, an involuntary sound, he could not stop it. You know what the chronodrift are? He said. His voice came out quieter than he intended. Maren nodded. We've encountered temporal species before, not them specifically, but we understand the concept. They move outside normal causality. Zelthar closed his eyes, a gesture of concentration. The words felt dangerous in his mouth. They experience time as a surface, not a line. Most events are invisible to them. They exist in a state of near oblivion. Then how do they receive anything? Maren asked. They perceive ripples. Zelthar opened his eyes. The flickering light caught his vertical pupils, made them contract and expand. A transmission arrives at every point in their existence simultaneously. They cannot miss it. They have no before and no after to lose it in. Maren was quiet. Her fingers stopped tapping. The probe is sending to them, she said, not a question. Yes. That means the architects wanted the chronodrift to receive this data, not the Draxis, not anyone else. Zelthar felt the words land in his chest like a physical weight. He had known this. He had suspected it since first tracing the signal's destination. But hearing it spoken aloud by a human, in a maintenance corridor smelling of burning wire and failure, made it real in a way his own analysis had not. He said nothing for a long moment. The pipes above them hissed. A distant vibration ran through the deck plating. Torvin's aggression is a mistake, Zelthar said. The words came out flat, deliberate. He did not recognize his own voice. The hegemony is afraid. We have controlled every piece of the architect domain for 70 cycles. The probe is the first object we could not command. We do not know what it is. We do not know what it wants, so we assume it is a weapon. It's not, Maren said. I know. Zelthar's throat clicked again. He pressed his palm flat against the wall to steady himself. I have studied the emission patterns. The energy signature is too stable for a weapon, too constant. It is a transmission, a repeated message. The probe is not guarding anything. It is announcing something. Lysander's voice came from the corridor entrance, low and urgent. If you block that transmission, the chronodrift never receive it. The architect's final communication dies here. Could be a warning. Could be something we never get another chance to hear. Zelthar looked at Maren. Her dark eyes held no fear, no desperation, only a calm he did not understand. She stood in a hostile station, surrounded by scales and claws and suspicion. She looked at him like she had already expected this conversation. What makes you so certain? He asked. The question came from somewhere deeper than analysis. Your species is fractured. Your colonies are failing. Your own people cannot agree on a single policy. Yet you stand here asking me to defy my hegemony for a message you cannot even read. Maren did not look away. Because we know what it's like to send a message into the dark and hope someone answers, she said. We've been doing it for thousands of years. Radio waves, probes, names etched on gold plates. The architects built this thing to reach across time, not to guard territory, not to threaten, to speak. And only a species existing everywhere at once can hear them. She paused, her finger tapped once against her thigh. If we silence that, she said, We are no better than the people we used to call book burners. Zelthar felt something move in his chest, a shift he had no word for. His species had a term for threat recognition, a term for deference, a term for respect measured in submission hierarchies. This was none of those. This was something else. He made a decision. I will not report this meeting to Torvin. The words hung in the stale air. He felt them leave his mouth and knew he could not take them back. Maren's eyes widened, just slightly, a crack in her calm. You are certain? She asked. I have never defied a superior before. Zelthar's voice was steady now. The tremor had left it. But I have studied the probe for 11 cycles. I have traced its emissions. I have mapped its signal to a destination I cannot reach. And I know with the certainty of my species' analytical instinct that we are about to lose something that will never return. He turned and moved down the corridor. His claws clicked against the deck plating. Maren followed. Lysander fell in behind her, his boots silent on the metal. Zelthar stopped at a sealed junction box. The panel was dark, no status lights. He pressed his palm to the surface. He felt the vibration of the probe's energy conduit running through the wall behind it. This is where the probe connects to the station's grid, he said. The hegemony routed its power through our core to monitor its draw. They did not understand the conduit carries data in both directions. He pulled a tool from his belt, a thin rod with a crystalline tip. He inserted it into the seam of the junction box and pried the panel open. Inside, a tangle of cables gleamed with residual charge. Blue-white light pulsed through their translucent sheaths. If I reroute these 3 filaments, Zelthar said, pointing with his claw, the signal will bypass the station's recording array entirely. It will feed directly into any external receiver within 10 meters of this junction. Lysander stepped forward. His hand moved toward his belt, then stopped. I have a backup device, passive scanner, no transmission capability. It can record without broadcasting. That is what we need, Zelthar said. He reached into the junction box. His fingers found the first filament. It was warm, alive with energy. He pulled it free and felt the connection shift. The probe's data stream began to move through the gap. Maren watched in silence. Her gray streak caught the flickering light from the panel. Her finger tapped once against the wall. Zelthar, she said, why are you doing this? He did not look up. His claws worked the second filament free. Its sheath was slick with residual heat. Because I will not close a door, not one with the potential to remain open. The third filament came loose. He held it between 2 claws, positioning it toward the exposed port on the junction box's rim. One more adjustment. Then Lysander could connect his device, and the entire data stream would flow into human hands for the first time. Zelthar's throat clicked. He did not know the word for what he was feeling, but he thought it might be hope. The alarm screamed overhead. It tore through the corridor like a blade, high and sharp, a sound. It lodged in the skull and refused to leave. Zelthar's claws froze. The third filament hung suspended between his fingers. Torvin's voice came over the station speakers. Flat, controlled, the voice of a predator having found the prey's hiding place. Unauthorized energy draw detected in Sector 7. All personnel report to your stations. The door in Sector 7 is sealed. Security is en route. The corridor went dark. The flickering panel died, and the door behind them slammed shut with a sound like a tomb closing. The command center hummed with a low-frequency drone. It vibrated through Torvin's chest scales. He stood motionless before the central schematic, his amber eyes fixed on the probe's power signature, spiking in slow, rhythmic pulses. The orange display light pooled across his copper scales, turning his own reflection into something molten and unfamiliar. His claws tapped the console, faster than he intended. The holographic feed flickered in the corner of his vision. Maren stood in the maintenance corridor with Lysander beside her. They were speaking to Zelthar. The blue-gray Draxis was nodding, his damaged hand gesturing toward an access panel, not restraining them, not reporting them, helping them. Torvin's throat clicked, an involuntary sound. He suppressed the second one. He turned to face his 2 tactical officers. Both stood rigid. Their scales were a paler shade of green-brown under the command center's harsh white light. They had been watching the same feed. They knew what it meant. Seal every exit from the probe room, Torvin said. Deploy a containment field around that chamber, full radius. Do not activate it yet, but prepare the trigger sequence. The senior officer hesitated. His tail twitched once. Hegemon representative, the containment field will disrupt the probe's transmission permanently. The psychic scatter will corrupt the signal path. It cannot be restored. Torvin turned back to the schematic. The power signature climbed another fraction of a unit. He watched the curve rise. He did not blink. I do not care. The officer exchanged a glance with his subordinate. They moved to the secondary console. The low drone of the command center dropped as their fingers worked the activation codes. Torvin studied the feed. Maren's face was calm, but a thin sheen of sweat had gathered on her brow. Her hand was pressed flat against the wall, the fingers slightly spread. A human posture of confidence or fatigue, he could not tell which, but her eyes were steady. They did not flick to the security cameras. She knew she was being watched. She raised a communicator to her lips. The feed audio crackled. Torvin, I understand you are angry. He did not respond. Let her speak. But listen, she continued. The probe is not a prize, it is a door. The chronodrift can open it. Torvin barked a laugh. The sound scraped out of his throat, harsh and hollow. Humans, always reaching for grand metaphors when cornered. They would say anything to survive, anything to buy another cycle of breathing. The chronodrift, he muttered to the empty air. A species that does not even acknowledge linear existence, and she expects me to believe they care about a door. The junior officer glanced back. Sir, the containment field is armed, awaiting your order. Hold. Torvin stepped closer to the holographic feed. Maren had lowered the communicator, but she was still watching the wall. She knew the camera was embedded there. Waiting, not pleading, not bargaining, waiting. That patience unsettled him more than her arguments. A new alert chimed from the communications station. The senior officer read it, then read it again. His scales darkened. Hegemon representative. A joint message has arrived from the Polaran delegation and the Eco-Ancient Collective. Torvin's claws stopped tapping. They are requesting a ceasefire, the officer continued. They want open negotiation about the probe's disposition. The message includes a formal endorsement of the human diplomat's position. Silence filled the command center. The low drone of the power conduits became the only sound. 3 species, 3 different biologies, 3 different ideologies, 3 different ways of processing reality. The Polarans were magnetic-based entities communicating in pressure waves. The Eco-Ancients processed temporally, their thoughts arriving in reverse order from their actions. The humans crawled through a narrow band of causality. Their brain could barely hold 4 concepts simultaneously. And they had sent the same message, at the same time with the same request. Torvin scrolled through hegemony historical records in his memory. 12,000 cycles of data. No precedent. No record of 3 species aligning on anything without a war first, without a treaty enforced by blood cost, without a hegemon standing over them. His own people could not do it. The Draxis hegemony existed because one will bent the others. That was the natural order. Strength gathered strength. Fragments scattered. But these fragments had cohered, not through force, through request. His throat clicked again. He did not suppress it this time. Torvin stared at the message. He stared at Maren's steady eyes in the holograph. He stared at the probe's rising power signature, each pulse beating like a heart, waiting for something. He could still activate the field. He could freeze the transmission. He could seal the room, the station, the entire sector. The humans would have nothing. The coalition would collapse without a goal. The hegemony would remain intact. His claws rested on the containment activation switch. The senior officer watched him. The junior officer watched him. The holographic Maren watched him. He thought about the human engineer. He had spotted the fusion core flaw, a simple diagnostic, a problem his own technicians had missed for 3 cycles. The human had fixed it in 4 minutes with a handheld tool and a steady hand. He thought about the Polarans. They had not spoken to the hegemony in 50 cycles, but suddenly broke silence for this. He thought about Zelthar, his most obedient technician, standing in a maintenance corridor beside a human and choosing to disobey. This was not a trap, this was a test, and he had been measuring the wrong variable. Torvin lifted his claws from the activation switch. Hold the containment field, he said. Do not engage. The senior officer blinked. Sir. You heard me. Maintain readiness but do not activate. I will speak to the human. He opened a direct channel to the maintenance corridor. The holographic feed shifted to show Maren's full face. She was breathing slowly, deliberately. A tactic to control heartbeat, he guessed, nervous system regulation. Human, Torvin said, we will talk. Maren did not smile, she simply nodded. But if this is a trap, I will freeze every molecule in this room. He meant it. And somewhere beneath the words, buried beneath pride and protocols and 12,000 cycles of hegemony certainty, Torvin felt something regarding a human. He had never expected to feel it. Curiosity. The status panel had gone dark. The air in the maintenance corridor sat dead and still, heavy with the smell of burnt insulation. A metallic taste like old coins coated Maren's tongue. Zelthar pressed his palm flat against the sealed door. His breathing was shallow. His pale blue-gray scales looked almost white in the emergency lighting. This is not good, he said. The panel speaker crackled. Torvin's voice came through, tight and controlled. Human, your excursion ends. I am offering a truce. Shut down the probe's signal immediately. Cease this interference with hegemony space. Maren stood her ground. No. A pause, the silence stretched. The signal is more important than hegemony pride, she said. It's a message across time. You don't silence that because you're afraid of looking weak. Torvin's voice sharpened. You have no authority here. You are a guest in my domain. The architects chose the chronodrift as their audience, Maren said. Not you. Your pride is not worth their silence. A low rumble traveled through the corridor floor. It came from the far end, a vibration climbing Maren's legs. It settled in her chest like a second heartbeat. Lysander's backup device chirped. His face went pale. He dropped the scanner with a hiss of pain. The casing had gone hot enough to burn his palm. Something just opened. A reality bridge. The signature, it's not Draxis. I have seen nothing like it in the logs. Zelthar turned. His eyes widened. His pupils dilated so fast they nearly swallowed the amber. The chronodrift, he said. They received the signal. They are responding. The wall at the far end of the corridor split open. No explosion. No breach. The metal simply parted along a line. The line should not have existed. From that seam, a jagged rift tore itself into the air. Silver light bled from the wound, shimmering like oil on water. The smell of ozone and dry dust flooded the corridor, a thunderstorm in a desert, sharp and ancient and wrong. A figure stepped through. It was a crystalline humanoid shape, tall and thin. Its surface caught the silver light and scattered it into afterimages. The images lingered for a full second. It moved with a lag as though it existed a beat behind the present. Its head turned and the gesture arrived late, the motion arriving after the intent. The chronodrift spoke. The voice came from everywhere at once, from inside Maren's skull and from the walls and from the air itself, layered and harmonic. The architects warned us about the fracture. You have healed it. Maren's breath caught. The figure pointed at her. Its crystalline arm moved in delayed increments. We accept the alliance. The word hit Maren like a physical blow. Alliance. The chronodrift had no concept of negotiation, no framework for a deal still forming. They saw only the result. Torvin's voice exploded from the panel speaker. What alliance? Explain. Human, you will answer for this. Lysander was staring at the chronodrift. His burned hand hung at his side, forgotten. Maren, they think we've already done it. They think humanity unified everyone. She understood, the first impression error. The chronodrift perceived coalition building as a finished state. They existed outside normal causality. For them, the outcome was the truth. The struggle was invisible. The rift flickered, its edges frayed. For a moment, Maren saw something through the gap, not the corridor behind it. A desert under a red sun, a battlefield with unfamiliar weapons, a Draxis city burning. Then the images vanished. The chronodrift tilted its head. The motion arrived a second late. The bridge is leaking. We must stabilize it or all timelines converge here. A second rift opened beside the first. Smaller, jagged, something staggered through. A Draxis soldier fell onto the corridor floor. His uniform was wrong, the cut, the symbols on his chest, the design of his sidearm. He was from a different century. He looked up at Zelthar. His eyes showed no understanding of what they saw. The chronodrift spoke again. This is what comes of delay. The fracture spreads. We must act now. Maren's mind raced. She could not claim an alliance. No such alliance existed. But she could not correct the chronodrift. Doing so would break their trust. They had come because they believed humanity had achieved something impossible. She stepped forward. We are still healing, she said. The work is not finished, but we will finish it. That is the human promise. The chronodrift regarded her. Its afterimages lingered, overlapping. They created a ghost of motion already gone. You speak of a future as a certainty, it said. Most species speak of futures as possibilities. You find this distinction trivial. It's not trivial, Maren said. It's exhausting, but it's how we survive. The chronodrift was silent for a long moment, then it nodded. The gesture arrived late, but it arrived. We accept the intention as the fact. Your species does not retreat from a promise once spoken. This we understand. Torvin's voice came through the speaker, quieter now. I am receiving data from the chronodrift network. They are declaring a formal communication channel with humanity. Zelthar stared at Maren. His missing spur caught the silver light. You did not plan this. No, she said, but I will not refuse it. The second rift pulsed. The ancient Draxis soldier scrambled backward, his hand going to his sidearm. He spoke in a dialect. The words made Zelthar go still. He says he fell through a battle, Zelthar said slowly. A war against something he calls the unwoven. He says the chronodrift sealed his timeline to contain the threat. The chronodrift raised its crystalline arm. The bridge is not stable. We have minutes before the leakage becomes permanent. We must choose, seal the connection now or accept the risk of temporal convergence. Maren looked at Lysander. He was cradling his burned hand, his jaw tight. The probe, she said. If we seal the connection, does the signal stop? The chronodrift answered. The signal has been received. The transmission is complete. The bridge is a response, not a continuation. Sealing it ends nothing but the breach. Maren turned to the speaker panel. Torvin, you hear this. The signal is done. What happens now is a choice between fear and trust. The silence from the panel stretched. The ancient Draxis soldier spoke again, his voice urgent. Zelthar translated without looking away from Maren. He says the unwoven follow bridges. If we do not seal this, they will find it. They will come through. Maren looked at the chronodrift. Can you seal it while keeping the alliance channel open? The chronodrift's form flickered. Its afterimages overlapped, creating a pattern. It hurt to look at. Yes, but the process requires a stabilizing anchor on both sides. An object present in both the source and the destination. Maren reached into her jacket. She pulled out a data chip. Lysander had used it to sync with the probe. It held traces of the architect's signal. Will this work? The chronodrift studied it. It carries the frequency of the transmission. Yes, it will serve. Lysander looked at her. That's the only copy of the raw signal, if we lose it. We have the data in your backup device, Maren said. The chip is a copy, a dead copy if we don't use it. She held the chip out. The chronodrift reached for it. Its crystalline fingers closed around the data chip. For a moment the rift pulsed with a deep, resonant tone. It vibrated in Maren's bones. The edges of the rift began to smooth. The silver light dimmed, pulling inward, knitting itself closed. The ancient Draxis soldier stumbled toward Zelthar, his hands raised in surrender. Torvin's voice came through the panel, barely audible. The chronodrift network is acknowledging the stabilization. The alliance channel is open. It is addressing me directly. Maren let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. The chronodrift looked at her one last time. Its form was already fading. The afterimages contracted into the body. No species in the architect's memory has accomplished this. Humanity has. You reached across a fracture and held it together with nothing but words and intention. We will remember this. The rift sealed. The corridor was silent again. The emergency lighting flickered, then steadied. The smell of ozone began to fade. Zelthar turned to Maren. The Hegemony Council will ask questions, many questions. Let them, Maren said. I have answers now. She looked at the space where the chronodrift had stood. The afterimages were gone, but the shape of what had happened remained. A first impression, a misunderstanding, a correction, an alliance. Torvin's voice returned to the speaker. Human, we need to talk. Maren touched the wall where the rift had opened. The metal was cold again, solid. Yes, she said, we do. The ancient Draxis soldier spoke. No one translated. No one needed to. The look on his face was enough. The rift was gone. The chronodrift presence faded from the corridor, leaving behind only the scent of ozone and the quiet hum of the station. Maren let out a long breath. She had done it. In the command center, Torvin stood watching the data stream settle. The alliance channel remained open. The probe's signal continued its patient pulse, now fully received. He felt something shift in his chest, a recognition he had not expected. "Send a message to the human delegation," he said. "Tell them we are ready to negotiate in good faith." The senior officer nodded. The command center hummed with a new rhythm. It was the sound of connection, not isolation. Maren stood in the maintenance corridor. Her gray-streaked hair was damp with sweat. Zelthar and Lysander flanked her. The ancient Draxis soldier had been taken to medical. The station felt different now, as if the air itself had changed. "We made it," Lysander said, cradling his burned hand. Maren shook her head. She tapped her finger once against her thigh. "No, we started something. That is the harder part." Zelthar looked at her. His vertical pupils dilated slowly. "What happens next?" Maren managed a thin, exhausted smile. "We build." The speaker overhead crackled. Torvin's voice came through, steady and deliberate. "Human, the alliance is open. The galaxy will not wait." Maren looked at the sealed door, at the probe chamber beyond. She looked at the path forward that had not existed an hour ago. "Good," she said. "Neither will we."